Well, thank you all for joining us so far. It's a genuine privilege to have with us some of the very best AI entrepreneurs in the UK with us for our first panel discussion. And I'm excited to get the entrepreneur's perspective, to hear about how they're using AI to deliver tangible benefit, their views on the impact of AI, and the dynamics between startups and the incumbents that they supply or disrupt. Could I maybe just ask each of our panelists to start with a quick 30-second intro to themselves and tell a bit about the role and your mission at your company? Perhaps should we go clockwise, Janet?
Thank you. Okay, so I'm Janet Basterman. I'm Chief Science Officer at a company called StoryStream. And we empower brands by helping them analyse and access the user-generated content that their customers create and enable them to tell the stories that their customers want to tell. And we use AI in a whole range of things underneath that, which we might go into a little bit more detail later on. But we look at lots of different types of AI, from data analytics, vision, text, and NLP, and combine all of these to get some really, really deep insights for our customers.
Fantastic. David?
Cool. David Benningston, I'm CEO and founder of a company called Signal Media. The mission that Signal has is really all about kind of aggregating and bringing together the world's information. So for us, that looks like the world's news flow, a lot of the world's social media, a lot of the world's regulatory data. And we apply machine learning and AI to transform that unstructured data into kind of meaningful, actionable insights for businesses, typically large corporates in financial services and professional services, who want to use that data and those insights to better manage their reputation, to get ahead of reputational risk or regulatory risk, and ultimately to make better decisions around what they're investing in and where they're spending their dollars.
Great. Fabio?
Hi, so I'm Fabio Kuhn, founder and CEO of Vortexa. So we use artificial intelligence in the energy industry. Our primary focus is closing the information gap between what happens in the physical world versus what comes to the trading desk, to the energy markets. So in order to do that, we process data in a very large scale, particularly new data coming from satellites. It's an industry that is having their own revolution, in its own right, but it ones that has also knock-on effect on other industries, energy being one of them. But the ability to extract value of a lot of the data that is coming from those new constellations rely a lot on advanced modeling, advanced artificial intelligence, processing images, radar positions of assets around the world, basically to understand how energy is moving in its different forms, so that the markets can price, understand the supply and demand conditions, and be able to optimize their own assets. So before starting the company, I was with BP, so I was running BP's global analytics and trading technologies. Saw quite early on the impact that new data was happening in the trading floor, and 2 years ago, set up Vortexa. It's been an incredible ride. Today, we have most of the energy companies as our clients and partners, quite a few of the large investment banks and hedge funds as well. And 2018 will be an absolutely incredible year for us. So.
Great.
I'm Dan. I'm heading a data science team of 5 at Gusto. I'm filling in for Timo, our CEO and founder. So hopefully we will be able to fill his shoes. And yeah, I joined Gusto quite in the early stage when we were still fairly small startup 3.5 years ago. Now we're about 10 times bigger. So it was a really exciting journey. What we actually do is we are a recipe key delivery service, which means that we deliver food to customers and give them like this convenient way of enjoying food. I mean, cooking food and of course eating as well. So customers pick from 22 recipes at the moment on a menu. Then we deliver wholesome food, all ingredients in a box that customers then can cook themselves and really enjoy it. So basically no planning, no supermarkets and no food waste, which I think is really a good thing. So yeah, as I said, we're quite big now and we're leading the proposition in our sector. And I'm pretty much sure that Timo would agree that AI had and still has a big contribution to that. So yeah.
Great. If we can go around the group, what business process improvement or customer benefits specifically are you delivering through AI? And if you can quantify that benefit, so much the better.
And I think for us, it's getting the signal from the noise. We look predominantly at social data, and there's something like 10,000 posts on Instagram in a few seconds. So there is too much for a human to go through, far too much. So we need to automate that, but we also need to intelligently automate it so that we can get the right things surfaced.
Yeah, I mean, not miles away from that. I mean, I think the two major global trends or challenges that we see large corporates facing are really that we're trying to solve are really around, number one, the explosion of data accessible to businesses, right from social media through to the online news flow, to even the complexity and explosion of regulatory data at a global level, and the fact that there's never been greater access to information for large businesses, yet it's never been harder to transform that information into something meaningful, into some actionable insight. And the second kind of big global trend we see in large corporates being the silo of knowledge, the fact that most domain knowledge is trapped within the heads of the employees who work at these large organizations, and their inability to distribute that knowledge across the organization. So what we're trying to do with machine learning is, number one, harness the world's information in a much more scalable and effective way. But number two, let our clients train up our algorithms to deliver more relevance and more insight. And so we're combining those two things. And so the system is adapting and getting smarter and learning over time. I mean, in terms of our ROI, if I think about the three use cases we're solving around reputation, regulatory risk, and investment, if I just pick on regulation, for example, one of our largest clients, they're currently spending over 100, they're one of the big four accountancy firms, they're currently spending over £100 million a year to manually update their clients on regulatory change at a global level. And they're just not being able to fulfill that need that the client has. So if you take Deutsche Bank, one of their clients operating in 220 different jurisdictions, how are they able to possibly cover all of that regulatory change in every one of those markets? So the ability that machine learning has is to do that in a much more automated and efficient way, to gather all of that information, understand what a relevant update might look like, and then deliver it to the client. So ultimately, we're trying to reduce that huge cost that they have, just as one example.
Great. Fabio?
Yeah, I mean, in our case, the scalability and the depth that we can go with algorithms wouldn't be possible with humans, right? Just the sheer scale of it. Just to give a perspective, I mean, the amount of change in data, just in terms of size, about 2 years ago was the whole planet would be pictured twice a month. Now it's every day, just in a period of 2 years. So give an idea of the whole planet in high definition every single day. And you can extrapolate that to positions, to other data sets and industry data sets as well. So the growth in data goes to a point where, you know, for it to be possible, even to try to do what we do with algorithms, you needed an army of 3,000 people. And probably by the time you process all that, they knew the information is old. So you wouldn't be able to actually execute on that on the market or optimize the assets the world will have passed by you. So that's the scale of the problem we're solving. And by providing that, we are helping the market optimize the flow of energy around the world. So there is an impact on overall society, availability of energy, and obviously some price optimization as well for the participants. So. Yeah, so that's the main problem.
So yeah, in our case, it's a B2C business. I think really we are kind of customer-centric. So it really is about the proposition. That's what is really most important for us, which means that we can offer customers like to order box every day. Ideally, we can offer next day delivery with a lot of choice of recipes. But of course, as we know that more choice is not necessarily good. It's basically we want to offer them meaningful choice. So it really is about, I mean, it's a lot about personalization, how we want to make, this service or basically using it as convenient as possible and to be like highly, customizable and also personalized. And then that all goes down to the manufacturing. So because we are not just e-commerce, just selling boxes or how to say, but then at the end, it's also manufacturing, we pack those boxes or ingredients in boxes. So we are touching all these points, I would say, with using AI. So personalization is one part, but then also it's like demand planning, where we really want to minimize food waste, which is a big kind of target or objective for us. And then also down to, optimizing warehouse to make it really efficient and being able to, deliver all this more choice to our customers. Because then when it comes to packing all this stuff or logistics, it really becomes really, really complex. And we need to use AI to be able to do this, otherwise it would not be possible.
Fantastic. And perhaps, David, what do you think's most misunderstood about the impact of AI, either in your industry or generally?
So I think there's big issues with this, and they're kind of at either end of the spectrum. I mean, on one end, you've kind of got this kind of Elon Musk pervasive view that AI is going to come and take all of our jobs and rule us in this kind of Terminator 5 style Dark Overlord scenario. And on the other end of the spectrum, when we engage sometimes with large corporates, there's just a kind of disengagement. There's a lack of understanding. There's almost a kind of lethargy. We do things this way. These are the processes that we use. These are the huge amounts of manual effort that we put into doing what could be a very kind of automated task, essentially. And I think either of those views, that either AI is not going to solve any of the problems and we're miles away from it doing anything effective, or that we are a matter of months away from artificial intelligence taking all of our jobs and making us all redundant. I think both of those extremes are not particularly accurate of where we are today. I mean, I think our focus is all about bringing human knowledge and expertise in collaboration with machine learning, because algorithms are useless without valuable data that's inputted into them. And in particular, the data that we're harnessing is often human curated or created data. And so I think it's that synergy between those two things. It's about getting domain experts to work with machine learning and then to solve tasks that are repeatable and have a potential to be automated. And so I think it's a much more balanced view as to where we are today. And so sometimes I think we get either of these polar extremes, either kind of knowledge workers in law firms who just want to use Boolean search and basically say that process is absolutely fine for us today, or people who think AI is going to kind of take all of their jobs and are kind of frightened by that. And I don't think either of those are.
Yeah.
When do you think we'll get to a place where there will be a slightly more sober recognition of that midpoint reality?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just incremental. I think it's about, each day we're beginning to see more and more the application of artificial intelligence across all spectrums of life, whether that's in the consumer market, in the enterprise market, in the way that we buy products, in the way that we shop, in the way that we consume information. And I think that kind of incremental, gradual acknowledgement that artificial intelligence is going to be transformative. The rate of that transformation, I think, is still very difficult to predict. But I think that, certainly within an enterprise context, I think businesses are now beginning to see the potential for it, for meaningful ROI that can be delivered through the use of this technology. I think I'll make the point, though, that AI, like the internet, is just an enabler for value. And I think people kind of get lost in that a little bit as well. And I know in your report you speak a lot about the difference between horizontal application versus vertical application. We are a big believer in the productization of technology, and therefore the value being delivered, irrespective that AI and the machine learning is hidden. And ultimately, the end user doesn't really care whether you're using machine learning or not. They care whether you're delivering value and solving a problem. And so for us, we think about it as an enabler, not the end result. And I think that's very, very important, because ultimately that's what's going to realize the transformation.
Great. Janet, what do you think is most
misunderstood? The solving the problem is absolutely key. The problem that we've got this misunderstanding is down to a whole host of things. The media really don't help. They overly sensationalize things, from making out that Facebook are on the verge of this general artificial intelligence and it had to be turned off. But they're creating these stories to engage us because everything's up to the minute. So you've got this problem where people are being fed all of this over-sensationalized information about AI without having that balance of what exactly is it. And I think, as we just discussed, it's a means of solving a problem. It should be considered a tool. And you don't need to understand the mathematics any more than you need to understand how an engine works to drive a car. But you do need to know what happens when you put certain things in order to get certain things out. And that's key. But understanding the problem you want to solve is critical. You wouldn't use a power drill to bang in a nail. So you've got to choose the right tool for the job.
I'd like to get your perspectives about the state of the incumbents. So, Dejan, your CEO, Timo, highlighted to me that he thinks in the grocery market, the incumbents are years away from actually being able to embrace this technology effectively. I'm just curious, in each of your industries, how quickly and effectively do you think incumbents can take advantage of AI?
Yeah, I do agree with that. I mean, one thing is that basically, they're far away from source, I would say. So let's say with the physical markets, they don't actually, they don't have interaction directly with customers. That's one thing. And the other thing is that even when they're buying stuff. You know, as a customer, you buy a basket with a lot of things, and you don't know how you use them at the end and when you use them. So let's say in our case that, you know, how we collect the data is actually we know what they prefer, what kind of food, basically at the end, what they cook. And basically with more using their, you know, our apps, or let's say Alexa app that we have as well, we also get their behavior. So when they cook and how long they need and etc. So all this stuff, we collect this data. And that's how I see it, is that quite often they say that maybe bigger companies have more data or more data sets, but also on the other hand, maybe they don't necessarily have the right data, or data is quite often is siloed, which means that it's difficult for them to get the data together and really use it for that purposes. So how far away are they? I think, you know, now we see that they start thinking about it, but then, you know, it takes quite a few years to get there, to start applying AI. So yeah, probably in my view, you know, 3 to 5 years at least.
Okay, so useful advantage.
I would say in our market, but that might really depend on.
Fabio, how long until BP can do what you do?
So no names specifically, but what was very interesting about our case, and it touches on some of the points you made on the markets and finance, and being quite an area of applicability, but it's also an area where the value is quicker recognized and quicker incorporated, because that difference makes the difference acknowledged that make quite a big difference to P&L, quite a big difference to how things are managed. In our case was quite interesting because, you know, I come from the industry, my chairman as well, so we're very well connected to the industry. And at the beginning, we were very well received as something that is interesting and that it could work with. Ultimately, by showing results within a certain period of time is what allow us to work with them and show that we could move faster than the internal initiatives. It allow us. It was required that we delivered results and we demonstrated our capability before we were able to switch the mindset of doing in-house versus partnering with us. And that breakthrough of critical mass allow us to do very strategic data swaps, data partnerships that allow us then to create a much larger network effect on the data to further solve the problem for the rest of the industry. But it did require results at the end of the day. You know, the whole artificial intelligence is interesting, is an interesting topic, but in the markets, it all boils down to better, you know, proved information.
But the kind of message I'm taking from those two is, I mean, it sounds like it's going to be quite some time until the incumbents could
maybe
get the kind of place you're in.
one thing that I would add is also, it's not just about data, but then it's also about the culture, like you said, or mindset. So in our case, it's like we really started collecting and thinking about this data, you know, since the beginning, which now we already have this culture. So everyone in the company, they're aware that we're doing machine learning, and they're always thinking, oh, what else can we do? So quite often happens that people come to us and say, oh, can we use, I don't know, your smart algorithms to do these things? Which is great, because we then have a lot of challenges, and we can really leverage that. Of course, we need to prioritize. But yeah, I think it's also about this culture, having like people thinking about it, that we can really use them. Like maybe in some bigger companies, that's more difficult because they just don't, they're not used to it, or they're not really using them.
And just on that, I mean, in terms of engaging with those incumbents, engaging with buyers, obviously startups offer valuable innovation and particular skills in this area, but your scale and resources are going to be more limited. How can buyers, I mean, if there's corporate executives in the audience, how can buyers engage more effectively with early stage companies like yourself to actually unlock some of those benefits? And perhaps if I say conversely, what can you as startups do better to engage with them? Maybe David?
Sorry, excuse me. What can corporates do better? I mean, I think first there's just a realization that's happening within the market when we engage with large corporates now. I think if you would have gone 5 to 10 years ago, there was a lot of internal build going on, basically. And I don't think you can walk into a bank in the city without them having done some sort of project with an Oracle or an IBM, which failed, which was a tank. And which they spent huge amounts of money on, and that is just like a common recurring experience that I think we're hearing from the market. And I think this realization that you can take the best of both worlds, that corporates have huge amounts of value, whether it's domain expertise, whether it's the scale, the resources, but often when it comes to machine learning, they sit on vast amounts of very, very valuable proprietary data that, as a startup, you just would never have access to. And so I think that best of both worlds is then taking best-in-class emerging technology and combining it with what your clients have in their kind of value set. And I think that context is becoming more and more common, where you have innovation teams within large corporates who understand a kind of not a kind of project-based, but an iteration-based type of pilot, where you can kind of do a 3-month or a 6-month or a 9-month project, demonstrate some ROI, demonstrate some value, kind of remove the stumbling blocks which you often fall down which is compliance and procurement, build a relationship, demonstrate some value, and then move on to a kind of longer-term relationship. And that is a model that we've now employed with a handful of large enterprises, which have been incredibly successful. So I think that's kind of one piece when you're working with large global corporates. I mean, on our kind of core use case, which is selling into corporate communications departments with this reputation monitoring piece, I think, again, we've had to re-educate the market, and that's been our responsibility. We've had to educate them to the benefits of what machine learning and AI can do. And there was huge amounts of lethargy and reticence in that market for change. I think they'd been burnt by a number of products that had come into the market and promised them the world, in particular in the area of sentiment analysis. And I think it was down to us to demonstrate how we could differentiate from those new products, but also the incumbents that sat within the market. And fortunately, I think we focused a lot on that. We now have north of 150 corporate clients within that particular use case. So I think we're beginning to see the kind of the rate of change accelerate, basically.
Okay. Let's talk about the challenges of building AI, because you guys are at the forefront of this. The war for talent is obviously fierce. Janet, how do you go about attracting truly world-class AI talent?
I think the biggest problem is knowing what sort of talent you need. And it's very easy to just say, okay, I need 20 people with PhDs who've all published at these big conferences and put them in a room and hope that something magic happens. But it just doesn't work like that. And the sad thing is that finding the right mix of people who have the right sort of talents is really hard. And it's not a good brief that you can give to an agent unless you can find someone that's as tuned in as you are. So one of the ways I go about it, I go to the conferences, I talk to people, I go to meetup groups, and you can tell when someone's got the intellect and the problem-solving abilities. That means that they can apply the knowledge that they've got, whether that's at MSc, PhD level, or even in some cases self-taught, and they can apply that to the problems that you have and come up with something remarkable. And one of the other flip sides of it is obviously the competition's fierce. So if I'm talking to somebody who I think is absolutely amazing, I want to work for me, how can I attract them away from all of the other companies that are advertising? And being a startup, we can't offer the humongous salaries that some of the big fintech companies are offering. So we've got to offer them the intellectual challenge and the stimulation that a lot of these people are really looking for. So having variety in the job, and also a great work-life balance, and making sure that they enjoy it. I mean, I run my teams like academic labs, and we have this collaboration, and we have lots of freedom to pursue things that we're all interested in, and from that we get much better solutions.
Okay, useful advice. I'd like to finish, and forgive me, I haven't actually warned you about this, so you will get very authentic responses to the next questions. I want to just finish with a quick fire round, literally 1 or 2 word answers from each of you. If you go around, please, 4 questions. Firstly, is the promise of AI overhyped?
Depends who you talk to, but mostly yes.
No.
Yes, in some dimensions, no in other dimensions. So I think
So it depends.
He cheated.
Yeah. You'll get a sore bottom sitting on the fence there. Okay.
Yeah, I would maybe say on short term, yes. On long term, long run, no. It will have big impact.
In which sector will AI have the most profound impact?
Gosh, depends how you're defining profound. I actually think legal.
That's a good answer. I think just across the board, C-level intelligence. So for the C-suite generally.
I think at its core, it started at the information side, and then it kind of reverberates across the rest.
I would say healthcare, I think, is probably quite a big one or important one as well that will be tackled.
Should we worry a lot about autonomous weapon systems?
In whose hands?
Yeah. I'm going to say yes, they shouldn't exist.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And finally, will AI destroy more jobs than it creates?
No.
No.
Yes.
I think, again, on the short run, yes, not in the long run.
Okay. And very finally, if there's one message about AI that you'd like our audience to kind of take away from today, what would that be?
Oh, one message. There's so many good ones. I'd say don't get machine washed. Understand what it is and what it can do.
That's the title of my next blog post, right?
Yeah, I think approach it pragmatically and practically, which is it's going to solve real problems. It's not going to solve all of your pains, nor is it going to take your job and wrap you in chains.
Yeah, I think that the biggest, I guess, point would be to really kind of try to separate signal from noise. Yeah, perhaps use signal media to do that. But really, leave aside a lot of this discussion about AI, superintelligence, taking over, and focus a lot on the other areas of applications where I think it's completely unemphasized, but that's where I think the biggest change will be happening in the next few years. I don't believe it is at the moment receiving enough attention. To a certain extent, it's good because that's where we're moving fast, but it will become apparent in the next few years, and I think that understanding can be very useful.
I would say use AI for solving real problems, not just because it's cool, and just use it because everyone does it.
Great. Do we have 5 minutes for questions? 2 minutes for questions. Okay, excellent. Get your thinking caps on. We've got a couple of roving mics. Who would like to ask a question to the panel? Yes, a gentleman down here.
Thank you for your answers and your great keynote today. My name is Mark. I work at Gusto. Just as a disclaimer, I'm going to ask a question to someone else. Maybe David in particular. Do you think there should be some kind of accreditation for data scientists like myself in dealing with these kinds of data? I see personal data on a daily basis. GDPR is coming up. Do we need something that's similar to Hippocrates' oath in medicine for data scientists?
Yeah, I mean, I think this issue is certainly very hot, and I think it's coming. I mean, I think the answer to cut it short is yes. I think we do need some sort of independent kind of arbitration for this field. Generally, I think one of the biggest challenges AI faces today, which is real, is the issue that no one has figured out how to embed algorithms with ethics. So they're very good at processing vast amounts of data. We're increasingly handing over more and more control for decision making, and our experience of the world is increasingly becoming more and more curated by algorithms. You only have to think about how much news is consumed on the Facebook feed, and then if you think about the mechanisms behind that feed, well, those algorithms are there to try and make you click on more information you're likely to click on, and this is what's kind of surfaced this big issue of filter bubbles. So I think as our world becomes more and more curated by algorithms, I think the people who are designing those algorithms and the organizations who are putting them in our hands, I think we do need to think about this ethical issue and how that's kind of monitored. I think regulation would be the worst answer to that, but I think if Facebook in particular don't figure out how to solve some of these issues pretty soon, I was at a Lord Select committee recently, they're edging closer and closer to being regulated, and that would be a real shit thing for people like us, to be frank.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the regulation's coming. I think we're going to see some one way or another, but the ethics is only ever going to be as good as the people that are building these things.
And there's a lot of talk. I think Facebook have some of the brightest brains in the world, but there's a lot of talk and there's a lot of kind of PR spin, and there's actually not a lot of real action from what I've perceived so far. And I think they really do need to, them and a number of other large companies need to kind of step up to the plate, because otherwise, regulation is going to be the answer, which isn't going to be great.
Thank you, David. Forgive me, I think we better leave it there, but I think these folks will be sticking around, so I think if do ask them afterwards. Can I say a big thanks to our panelists?